and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Waves, the podcast where we dive deep into the currents of transformation, healing, and the authentic living. I'm your host Avik, and today's episode promises to touch the deepest layers of your being. So, we are exploring a theme that feels both ancient and revolutionary. It's reconnecting with the body's wisdom to dissolve the mental patterning and the old identities through sacred feminine wisdom. Yes, you heard that correctly. So, in a world that often teaches us that to live from the neck up, then this conversation is definitely a heartfelt call to return to our bodies, to listen, to feel, and also at the same time to let our deepest essence lead the way. So, whether you are on your own healing journey or maybe you are seeking a more soulful connection to yourself, then this episode is here to remind you that your body holds the keys to your freedom. Yes. So, dear listeners, we have a lovely guest today with us. Today, I'm really honored to welcome Kalen Olson. So, welcome to the show, Kalen.
Thank you so much, Vic. Excited to be here.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we start delving into the topic today, today's topic is very great. But before we do that, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Kalen. Dear listeners, Kalen is a radiant teacher, artist, mystic, and a speaker. So, for over 7 years, uh, she has guided women and the seekers home to themselves by honoring the sacred rhythm that pulses uniquely within each of us. So, her work is beautifully woven, like from the sacred feminine and the masculine wisdom, like blending non-dualism, forgiveness, and the embodied aliveness. Yeah. So you might be wondering, like, then what's Kellen's mission? Well, Kellen's mission is very simple: to make the sacred tangible, inviting us all into a life where the divine is not just a concept, but a lived, breathed, and fully felt experience. Yes. So, dear listeners, I'll not take much of your time and I'll quickly jump in with the discussions with one and only Kellen. So, welcome to the show, Kellen.
Thank you, Vic.
Amazing. So, Kellen, like to start with, I mean, for those who are new to this concept, uh, what what does it mean to reconnect with the body's wisdom? So, if you can share.
Yeah. So, for many of us, we may have been conditioned to think from the mind and strategize and use logic, and there can be a place for that. And yet, we find ourselves not only in the West, but in other parts of the world at a point of disconnection from our body's wisdom. And so, we notice things like so much war. So much of the environment is out of alignment. People are working harder than ever, and tensions are in relationships. And I attribute a lot of that to not being connected to the body's wisdom and over relying too much on logic or old stories that perhaps have been recycled in the mind. And so, really, it's about an invitation to, instead of thinking positively or trying to just do a better job, it's about noticing that those stories in our mind also are deep in our bodies as feeling sensations of old stories. And when we connect to feeling them fully, then we can come back to the sacred aliveness and listen to the body's wisdom, much like we see nature doing already.
Mm, exactly. And so, on this, like, why do you feel that this is especially urgent in the today's world?
Yes, because I feel we've overcorrected so much, and I wouldn't even say into the masculine because there is a healthy representation of the masculine, but I would say perhaps, toxic masculinity, and that we have forgotten nature. We have forgotten those elements that connect us to our own sacred aliveness. And because of that, we're seeing the education system not working properly. We're seeing politics at an all time high of tension and our own relationships. Because when you connect with the heart, you start to create new solutions. You start to have more harmony in your relationships. And so, because we have reached a pinnacle of tension in all of those areas, as a species, it is more important than ever for us to continue evolving together by coming back to the body's wisdom.
Got it. Got it. Like I really love that you emphasize on the urgency. I mean, it feels like so many of us are disconnected and don't even realize that how deeply that affecting us. So yeah, that's very important. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so also you speak about the unique rhythm which is within each of us. So I'd love to ask, like, how can someone begin to discover and trust their own rhythm, especially if they have been out of touch for so long time? So what do you think on this?
Yeah. So it starts with working with what you have in your life and where you're feeling out of balance. And, you know, there can be a lot of distractions in the world of more money or job titles or such that on the surface perhaps feel fulfilling. But when we dig deeper, do they really feel like us? And so the invitation is to start questioning, where do I feel out of alignment? And to start inviting that wisdom in by really going into the body to feel the sensations instead of
Mm.
putting your awareness up in your mind, bringing the awareness down into your body. And there's a reason we call it listening to your heart's desires, because your heart is what lives in the body. And so it's really a process of bringing your awareness from your mind down into your heart so that your location point of awareness begins to shift.
Cool. Amazing. And like what to say? How to say? I mean, I'm thinking like uh mental patterning. It can be like so deeply ingrained. So what do you think are some of the subtle signs that someone's mental patterns are running the show uh, rather than embodied wisdom?
Yeah. I think of 2 different ways. One is, you just notice yourself, "Gosh, I've been in this loop before," or, "This feels like a familiar situation." I've been having issues or feelings of tension in this area of my life, and it feels kinda like a cycle. I think that's an interesting thing to pay attention to because life brings cycles, and so we can, instead of listening to the cycle of that mental rhythm, begin to listen to the body cycle. So there's definitely an invitation there. And then, more subtly than that, begin noticing in the body, where do you feel tension? In moment to moment, where are you feeling tight, agitated, and frustrated? And that's another invitation, instead of feeling like a victim or feeling like, why is this happening to me? That the body's asking you to wake up and perhaps invite a new wisdom online.
Wow. Ah, that's so lovely. I mean, and do you think that there's ever a place for the healthy mental patterning, or is it like a goal always to dissolve and release them completely?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, some people will say, like, it's not about the mind, it's just about the body. I have found that when they work in unison, that can be a beautiful thing because, we do need our minds to calculate our taxes or to, remember somebody's birthday is coming up. And so what's happened though is the mind has gotten away so far that, like a little puppy, we need to retrain it. And so it's almost like listening to the heart first and then having the mind be the servant instead of the master. So this is really about aligning with the feminine first in the heart and then having the masculine follow of the mind.
Understood. And I ask this because sometimes structure can feel grounding, but I sense there's a fine balance to strike. So, what you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. You're exactly right, and you're talking about the healthy blend of the masculine
Mhm.
and feminine, which is so important. I don't think there needs to be an overcorrection of just relying on the feminine. That's also not healthy. And
Mm.
so when we bring it into wisdom about allowing the structure to support the flow of the ideas, the beauty of creation, it's just like a tree out in nature. The tree has to have strong roots, it has to have a strong trunk in order for the beautiful flowers to bloom. The delicateness, the beauty, the sweetness, and softness of life, both are crucial and needed.
Exactly, exactly true. Yeah, and your work blends both the sacred feminine and masculine wisdom, like I was mentioning in the beginning. So, how do these energies work together in the process of dissolving an old identities? So,
Yeah,
you can share.
absolutely. I think we don't have to do an excavation of our psyche to look at what's not working. And sometimes that can also come from a place of trying to fix ourselves. I don't believe any of us are inherently broken. We may just have old thought patterns that are ready to dissolve. And so, really, the practice of tuning into what lights you up, what's your next heart's greatest joy, what's exciting you, the possibility, the creation, the beauty, the joy, that's tapping into the feminine. And when you do that, then you can ask for the proper structure to support that fruition of creation. And in doing that, by letting your heart's desires lead, patterning is naturally gonna come up. It's the gatekeepers of the challenge of the hero and
Mm.
heroine's journey of what's next. And so when you lead with your heart's desires, naturally the old patterns, the old systems come up, not because you've done anything wrong, but because they're actually ready to be felt and released as you step into your next chapter.
Wow, that's really amazing. And um, like I was also mentioning about the non-dualism, do you incorporate into non-dualism and forgiveness into your teachings? So, how do these spiritual concepts uh, practically help someone transform these stuck identities or the traumas? So, what do you have to say?
Yeah, this is such a big pillar of my work, and what I share with people is that we can get into it. It's common to get into a cycle of victim victimization in the world, whether that's in our individual relationships or the world at large. And really, how to break that patterning means that you're creating a new identity for yourself and you're no longer locked into that dynamic. And so, when we bring in pure non dualism through what I like to call mirror work, we're noticing that what we're accusing somebody else of can actually live inside of us. And when we start to bring that concept into our awareness, then that's when the judgment can stop. Because if there's something alive in me that also echoes that same pattern, then I can bring compassion, then I can bring acceptance. And the person, the idea outside of me, can no longer be the victimizer or the victim. There's no longer this dynamic of tension and conflict. It creates more of a neutrality frequency in your awareness so that you can see through the lens of a new light, through a new way to move forward, through new actions to take. And that doesn't mean bypassing the body either, but it does bring you into awareness of the mental dynamics. And then you can also feel that in your body in order to move forward.
Exactly. That's a really, really great saying, I would say. Great. And for the listeners who wanting something actionable, so for them, what's the one simple practice they can start today to reconnect with their body and begin with their sacred work? So, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I would say do a practice where you can sit in a quiet place with yourself and begin to bring your awareness from the mind and down into the heart. And really notice if you have a challenge coming up in your life, where does that live in your body? And can you really go down deep and feel that emotion in your body all the way? many of us know our heart's desires. And so bringing that as a component as well can be super helpful. And if you just are ready for a change, you can do this practice alone without needing to tap into your heart's desires.
Amazing, amazing. And also one more thing. I mean, I guess this, I don't remember I mentioned or not. Um, Embodying inner radiance, like you mentioned. So I was just checking when I was reading about that. So you mentioned about embodying the inner radiance. So what does it look or feel like in anyone's daily life? And if you can share an example also, that will be really, I mean, icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Mm,
So this is something that we've all felt. And it just depends on the really opening it up more because
mm,
we've all had experiences with our unconditional loving pet,
mm,
who sparks joy in us. Or perhaps it's baking a birthday cake for somebody's birthday, or hugging a loved one, or an ecstatic moment you feel when you have overcome a challenge. These are all moments of inner radiance. And so when we do the practice of embodiment and dissolving, then we are not only healing old patterning, but we're making way for more inner radiance to open up in our lives.
wow. Any example you can also share, like,
Yeah. So, for me personally, it was really interesting because the first part of my life, I really relied on the masculine a lot, and I developed that in myself very strongly. And so I was cut off from more of that feminine beauty aspect that I believe is also inherently part of the divine. We see it out in nature in the beautiful flowers in a gorgeous sunset. And those parts that we see out in nature are also alive in all of us. And so by doing that embodiment work, that can really help to activate the inner brilliance and beauty that's alive and inviting us into each one of us inside of us. And so that's really where I started to experience inner radiance in myself as well as by knowing that healing isn't just about dissolving old blocks, but it's also about creating beauty, that like you're not in a healing cycle forever. There's something beyond that. There's beauty, there's joy, there's creation. And so you're not just here to dissolve old patterning. You're here to experience beauty and magnificent unfold in your everyday life.
wow, wow. So from here, like, so I was, somewhere I was reading in the group, and I found some queries, basically. Not queries, I mean, people were talking about that in a group. So I'll not take the name of the group and all, but but before we do that, but before that, I have one more thing. Like, um, the sacred in the mundane. It's it's a very great sentence, I would say. And you say that sacred can be felt in everyday life.
Mhm.
So, how can someone transform the ordinary routines like walking, cooking, sleeping, working, um, into the sacred experiences? So, what do you have to say?
Yeah, there's two ways that people can go about this. One is think about an area of your life where you already are feeling joyous or there's something alive there for you. And what we can do is we can feel into how that feels in our body, feel that sensation, and practice bringing that energy over into the area we're desiring to transform in our other life. And so we can get used to that same type of rhythm that perhaps we feel painting a painting as we doing the dishes when it used to feel maybe scattered and stressed. And so those moments of like, instead of go, 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 coming back to the simple act of doing the dishes or those more ordinary moments can begin to feel more alive. And so in addition to that, I would also say like, where can you like where can you invite more aliveness into those dynamics? So, when you're cooking a meal, can you light a candle? Can you put on music and dance while you're doing it? And that's another way to bring a little bit more presence and get out of the mind, get out of the scattered thoughts and enjoy and notice there's a candle burning. There's music going. I'm enjoying this moment. Begins to breathe new life into those moments that felt ordinary to experience the same exuberance as you would at looking at a sunset.
That's really amazing. I mean, I'm personally so fascinated by this because um, I often feel most present in the simplest moments, and I believe there will be a lot more people as well who believe in this. But that's really the great one. It's really fascinating, I have to say. Yeah,
Mm.
and like I was just mentioning before that about those discussions which was happening. Um, it's not contradictory, but somehow it feels like. But so some critics they argue that focusing too much on the personal embodiment, it actually risks becoming self-indulgent or maybe even escapist. What did you respond to those perspectives?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, at least in my experience, women have been really undervalued in society. And so it can almost feel like a taboo to start bringing more beauty in, bringing more of that aliveness. But when we look at the nature of reality, nature is beautiful. That is the inherent creation of nature. And so noticing that in ourselves also is we're able to dissolve the old programming of not enoughness or of I have nothing to contribute or value, or I always have to be chasing the next thing. And so beauty isn't superficial about buying the next beauty cream. Beauty is about owning the power that lives in you as love, compassion, and being with somebody in the sacred wisdom of aliveness. That's really the invitation of sacred beauty. And so, if I were to go meditate all day on this, then yeah, I probably would feel a little disconnected from my life. But the invitation's really to start bringing in everyday practice in the morning or to start noticing when you're doing the dishes a little differently. And so it's bringing that into your everyday moments where you actually start to feel more present instead of less disconnected in my experience.
That's so lovely. That's so lovely saying on this. And before we wrap, if you could plant one sacred seed of wisdom in the hearts of every listeners today, what that would be.
Yeah, it would just be that you're already enough. And there's no amount of mind chatter that's going to convince you otherwise. But coming back to your body and to the love and how your body wants to support you and the wisdom that lives inside of you is really a beautiful way for you to get in touch with that. That you are beauty, you are radiant, and you are sacred and you are alive. And what you have to offer really matters in the world.
Wow, amazing. Lovely. So it's really, really nourishing and expansive conversation, Kellen. I mean, thank you so much for guiding us so beautifully into the heart of sacred feminine wisdom and reminding us that the body knows the way.
Mm. Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And also, I have to mention that your insights today have, uh, it's a kind of, I'd say, opened a portal for all of us to reflect how we live, breathe, and create from a place of deep truth and the radiance. So that's really amazing. And before I mention about the listeners, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the best medium to connect?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Avik, for having me on. It's also been a delight for me as well. And people can find me on KalenOlson.com, Kalen Olson, Olson. And then Instagram is the same, Kalen Olson.
Wow, that's amazing. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And I definitely encourage all of you to pause today, place a hand on your heart or belly, and listen. Your body is whispering, waiting to guide you home. So just listen to that. Yeah. And with this hope, until next time, keep riding the healthy waves of transformation. Stay grounded, stay radiant, and remember the sacred is always closer than you think. So, thank you so much.